Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine. Now, if you've watched my other show, The Dan Nichols Show, you'll know that we have a big focus on comedy. A lot of comedians on the show and a lot of fun with them. And comedy in South Africa is on the up and up and up. And three people who are key to that are the Goliaths. Now, they're not actually brothers, but they share the same surname. Jason and Nicholas are cousins. And then Donovan, the third member of the trio, just happens to have the same surname. And they've all come together most successfully. And Donovan and I were in Durban a couple of weeks ago doing an event together, and after we'd finished sharing the stage, we caught up over a glass of wine and talked about wine. It's an area of mutual interest. And Donovan's been trying very hard to get Jason to drink more wine, to learn more about wine. Jason is a great bon vivant. He loves life. He's larger than life, incredibly successful, but he's still finding his way in the wine space. So I thought this week I'd devote a show to my friend Jason Goliath and help him to find his feet when it comes to wine. And in doing so, start at the very bottom of the pile, so to speak, with the box wine. And box wine doesn't always have the greatest name. It's generally seen as being a little cheaper if you can't afford the bottled stuff you drink very quickly and maybe without quite so much of a focus on quality. Now, I'm not sure if that's always the case, but it certainly is the perception. So I thought I'd get 4 examples this week and sample them and see what they're like. Are they drinkable? Are they pleasant? Are they wines that I might actually bring into my weekly wine diary? I'm normally a bottle person. It's how I keep wine in my cellar. So I'm not sure that box wine will be for me, but who knows? I'm always open to persuasion. And the first wine we have this week comes from Robertson. And what they've clearly done is collected some old series or liquid fruit containers and rebranded them. And here you have a litre of Robertson Chardonnay. And generally, I find the Robertson area does wine at an entry-level space or thereabouts extremely well. You tend to not pay much, but get a lot more for it than you might be expecting. But can the Robertson winery, in a 1 litre plastic pack that warns me that it contains milk, deliver something I'd actually want to drink? Now, I'm not really sure what the tasting process is. I've never tasted wine out of a box, but so far seems okay, and thankfully I can't smell too much milk. So this comes in at 38 Rand, so if you work that out, that's probably in the region of about 30 Rand a bottle, 38 Rand for the litre, which this is. So that's not uber cheap, so maybe this is wine that's just packaged as such because the packaging might be its USP. It's easy to transport, take away with you maybe if you're off on a picnic or going away on holiday. But it's also a wine that you can simply reseal. And that's not a bad thing because quite often you'll have a bottle of wine and maybe it's just yourself, you want a couple of glasses for dinner, you're not home for the next 3 or 4 nights, and by the time you take the cork out again, you discover it's not really tasting as good as it should. So this could be an answer to that particular problem. Of course, for it to be an answer to that problem, it needs to be wine that you want to drink in the first place. And I could drink this. It's not dazzling, but it's a fairly solid Chardonnay. It's not as abrasive as I was expecting, given the packaging it's come in. It's actually fairly gentle. It's a little muted. There's nothing overly big, bright or bouncy about it, but it actually drinks quite pleasantly. And at 30 Rand a bottle, 38 Rand for this particular liquid fruit container, you're getting pretty decent value, and it's not a bad wine at all. Jason Goliath, this might be your starting point. Then on to Toitskloof, and I've been lucky enough to visit Toitskloof on a number of occasions. It's an estate that's had a really good name for a long time now for delivering excellent value for money. The wine's never expensive, but it's always very pleasant indeed. And this is a 3 litre box, and it's about 100 Rand or thereabouts, so you're looking at about 25 Rand a bottle for Sauvignon Blanc. Now that says 2 things. 1, that it is very good value, but 2, 25 Rand, is it going to be something I actually like? Now, they're pretty optimistic about what you should drink this with, according to the box. Pasta, seafood, chicken, pork, cold meat. This goes with just about anything, according to the Toitskloof. It's also harvested at night. Now, I've got no idea if that makes any difference at all, but it does sound pretty cool, and it adds to the whole package. And it's a package that, of course, doesn't need a corkscrew. It just needs a little bit of hard labour. It was quite fun pouring that in. What we've got here is a Sauvignon Blanc that's very light in colour, but has a very powerful bouquet indeed. You're going to pick that up very quickly. In fact, if I hold that close to the camera, you can probably pick it up yourself. There's a big, ripe, gooseberry type feel to it. So it's a Sauvignon Blanc for the masses, one that says it's loud and it's brash and it's full of flavour, and it's 25 Rand a bottle. So far, it does have quite a bit to appeal. A little on the sharp side perhaps, but this is eminently drinkable. It really is not unpleasant at all. It's quite smooth, it's reasonably delicate, it's got some nice fruit to it. It's certainly not as polished as wine you might find in the higher end of the sales bracket. But again, at 100 Rand for 3 litres, this is really, really good value for money. Do Toitskloof have that reputation, and rightly so? They've popped it into a box, and I think they've done all right. So I've survived 2 examples of box white wine. If anything is made to be cleaning septic tanks and removing stains, it's white wine in a box, but both of them have proved easy enough on the palate, and I think I might just survive. So we've got Jason Goliath's white wine collection done. How about some red? Now, red wine in a box, I have to say I'm a lot more sceptical about. The whole bottle aging element of wine, keeping it in your cellar for a long time, letting it develop in bottle, to me is so crucial to that whole process. But there are times when you just simply want to open a bottle of red wine and drink it. It might not be very old, it might be a bit young, might be full of fruit, but it's just what you need, what you feel like, and you don't want to be spending a huge amount of money on that particular bottle. And it's that kind of space where red wine in a box comes into play. This is the Long Market brand, 93 Long Market. That's the address of Woolworths headquarters if you head down to Cape Town. And this is from Simmonsvlei, and it's 2 litres, and this is 80 Rand for the box. So 40 Rand a litre, 30 Rand a bottle if you break it down. That's really not expensive at all. It's a Cab Sauv Merlot blend. This is a 2016 vintage, and it was filled in July of this year. It's also got a best before date, which just reaffirms the fact that this is not wine to age. You're not keeping this for 10 years and bringing it out for a special occasion. You're drinking it pretty much as you buy it. That's what it's there. It's filling a need, and it's there to be drunk as soon as you bought it. So I was pleasantly surprised last time around, and simply on the nose, that's actually quite appealing. There's a light cherry feel to it. Colour looks good. Could I be enticed to actually liking red wine out of a box? If I'm perfectly honest, it doesn't knock me off my feet, but it's not as devastatingly bad as I thought a red wine in a box might have been. In fact, it's actually quite nice. The Cabernet Sauvignon is coming through. There's some nice notes there, and there's enough Merlot to soften it, smooth it, ease off the tannins, and ensure that for a wine that's made in 2016, you can drink now. Ideally, I don't want to be drinking 2016 red wine in 2017. I want to be drinking it in 2020 and beyond. But for somebody who wants to drink the wine now, wants wine at a certain price point, and want wine that's not going to leave you feeling wretched as a result, I think this does the job. It's not expensive. It's a very solid blend. Woolworths, I think, have done a really good job in the wine market over the last while. They've made wine accessible. They've had some fun, and they've really supported a lot of our local winemakers. And what they've done here with an in-house brand is create something that's inexpensive, it's accessible, and actually tastes all right. And then for the last of the lot, and this, believe it or not, is probably South Africa's greatest wine success story at the moment. Certainly, if you look at sales, if you look at brand awareness, if you look at the impact it's having. It's called 4th Street. It's a brand by Distell. This is very much an entry-level market, yes, in price, but also in terms of palate, the kind of people who maybe aren't so keen on wine for the particular reason that it just doesn't sit comfortably on the palate. Now, you remember not that long ago we did a show on chocolate and coffee and spoke about how wine like the Chocoholic Pinotage, like the Dumas Fontaine Pinotage, like KWV's Cafe Culture were starting to get people into wine who might normally not have done so. Now, this takes it to another level entirely. It is an unashamedly sweet wine, and it's not a terribly strong wine. It's 8%, so it's about half or thereabouts of what you'd normally expect in a bottle of wine. So you can drink a bit more of it. It's a bit lighter alcohol content, although certainly not lighter in terms of its palate, or at least that's what I anticipate, because I've never actually had 4th Street before. It's a huge brand in East Africa. It's become a very aspirational brand, and it's a brand that's driven Distell sales and done really well for them. And it's a wonderful example of wine needing to appeal across the spectrum and not just at the very high end that we often think wine of appealing to. Now, that's not really a wine for me. It's just too sweet for me. If you think of a light version of a dessert wine, that's probably what you've got, a Cape Port style wine, but without the viscosity, without that slight heaviness. So it's maybe not for me, but it's a wine that is for a lot of people. People who are still trying to get their head and, more importantly, their palate around the nature of wine. And so by making it more accessible, you're opening up the world of wine to a lot more people. And that's what 4th Street has done so successfully. It's certainly sweet, not a sickly sweetness, just you can feel that it's very much there for you. It is very light, that 8% alcohol contributing to that, so there's nothing heavy about it. And you can see how it ties into that aspirational, have a drink after work, cocktail party type space. And when you see the branding on it, it all speaks to the same kind of image. So not a wine for me, perhaps, but Jason Goliath, you've got some pretty big parties. In fact, I think you've got an engagement party coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe this is another great addition, especially for those people who are just starting to find their way in the world of wine.